Abstract essay, where ideas take shape, thoughts find depth, and every conversation explores the art of thinking beyond the obvious. And today I have my special guest. He is an author, writing, and life coach, and of course, founder too, no other than Mr. Eric Gee.
How's it going?
Oh, busy, busy always, Mr. Eric. And how's life over there?
Well, I'm in LA, so the temperature's great. Nothing to complain about. So I'm all positive right now.
Yes, indeed. Count your blessing, people. Count your blessing and stop complaining. So, Mr. Eric, let's talk about how many personality types are there and how do you differentiate them? Can you tell us
Yeah,
more?
it took me a whole book to differentiate them. Really, like a book of mine called "The Power of Personality" came out last year, and basically detailed the 16 different personality types. And I think when people talk about personality types, that number is going to be pretty familiar to a lot of people. But the way that I discern between the 16 is very different than what's come before. So I would recommend just splitting people into four distinct groups first. And those four distinct groups have four distinct values that they prioritize. And then once you find out what group you're in, or I call them personality packs, then you can find out which of the four animal personalities within that pack you belong to. And of course, as we all know, 4 times 4 equals 16. So that's kind of what the general system is about.
General, indeed. The
Mhm.
power of personality. Well, Mr. Eric, what are the strengths and limitations of using the MBTI to categorize personality types in professional or personal settings?
I think the greatest limitation is the test itself, right? And how it determines which personality you are. I think it's oftentimes it's like you're either this or you're this. They'll ask you, are you more shy or are you more talkative? And I think that's not necessarily the best question you can ask someone, because I think we all can be shy depending on the circumstance, and we can be really outgoing depending on the circumstance, right, or the situation. It really just depends on how comfortable we feel. And I think different people have a different comfort level depending on the things that we value most. The more we are into something, the more we love it, then of course the more comfortable we're going to be discussing it and talking about it and interacting with it, versus the things that don't make us particularly comfortable. So in my book, which is very different than MBTI or Myers-Briggs, as I mentioned, it separates people into 4 different personality packs, and each one of those packs is determined by your core value. And I do feel like no matter what, if you're within your core value system, you're going to be a little bit more outgoing, or as they say, extroverted, than you would be if it wasn't your core value. So I do think that's one of the big limitations of MBTI is it doesn't even consider context, and I think context is extremely important.
Can you explain the big five personality traits and why they are often considered a trait based model rather than a type based one?
Yeah, the the big five is really similar in a lot of ways. Like it's basically Myers Briggs or MBTI with addition of one more trait, which is basically, are you healthy or are you unhealthy? I mean, I know they don't call it that, but it's basically like, are you normal or are you neurotic, right? So at the end of the day, it's once again, it's that same dichotomy of, are you this or you're that? Are you feeling or are you thinking? And I don't think that's the greatest dichotomy to have, because we all use our heads and we all use our hearts depending on the circumstance. And it really just depends on how we're feeling in that moment and the context that we're in. So in terms of big five is really just, it's MBTI with a little bit added at the end.
Mhm.
So not a huge fan of that one either.
How do you reconcile the debate between the type based systems and the trait based systems in personality psychology?
Well, traits are, it's easy to see the traits that people mention are the ones that are easiest to see, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's the most indicative of who we are. right? Like, so extroversion and introversion, the reason why I get so much play is because I think for the most part, it's something that's very easy to see on the outside. Is this person talking a lot, or are they not talking a lot? Do
Mhm.
they project a lot of energy, or do they bring in a lot of energy within? And I do think the trait-based systems tend to focus on the things, the concrete things that you can see, but that doesn't necessarily mean that doesn't necessarily define who a person is, right? Because if you see someone, let's say, playing sports, you go, oh, okay, that's a trait. This person is athletic and they like to move around and they like to compete. But I do think that we all like to move around. We all like to compete for different reasons. And I think the reason why someone does something is so important and so like integral to who they are. And I think that's more of a type-based system, right? You are this type. This is what you value, and thus the traits that you espouse or that at least you express are going to be based on that versus the other way around.
Are there lesser known personality frameworks like the 16 personalities that you find particularly useful, and why?
Well, 16 personalities is basically, once again, based on 16 personalities. So they all kind of stem, just like mine, they all kind of evolved from Myers Briggs. I know the Enneagram is something, or the Enneagram is something that a lot of people love. But of course, I'm going to love my own methodology, just not just because I wrote it, but because it's taken like 20 years to kind of like develop. But in terms of actual like specifics, I'm not a huge fan of 16 types either because it's almost like MBTI, but maybe almost an oversimplification. And I think when people look for these tests, I think that is a common framework. People want to, they're so easily taken by oversimplified personality typing methodologies because those personality typing methodologies focus on positive things. And once again, if you keep telling people positive things about themselves, they're much more likely to believe it than versus if you said, oh, you're bad because of this, or this is a negative trait that you have. Then people are less likely to like take it in. And I don't think that's the right way to go about it. Focusing on the positive. I think focusing on the negative is a little bit more accurate, I think.
Mr. Eric, how do you differentiate personality types based on observable behaviors versus internal motivations?
That's a good question. Of course, like the observable is important because it's exactly what we observe. But I do think when you start asking questions and getting a reaction from people, I think that gets a little bit deeper into the reasons why they're doing it, right? So, in my personality typing methodology, the 4 personality packs are defined by their core values, which are safety and security, which is one pack, excitement, visceral excitement, which is another pack, in information, which is another pack, and self knowledge. So if you think about it that way, each person values one of those things differently, like prioritizes those values differently. And people could say, oh, I value information and I value safety and security. That's great. You can value both, but you're going to have to choose between the two sometimes, depending on the situation. And in that case, it's which one do you prioritize more? That puts you into your specific personality pack. And I call those personality packs gatherers, hunters, shamans, and smiths based on the different roles in like let's say a medieval village or a tribe.
Great idea, Mr. Great idea indeed. And I have a drum roll for you for sure. And if I'm using club on my book 101 review, I'm gonna use drum roll or drum joke in on Hamstrak, I should say.
It's always
And
going to get a good rim shot in there.
yes, how role does self-awareness play in accurately identifying one's own personality type?
I think it's the most important thing, right? I mean, if you could tell someone, I mean, when we take these cookie cutter tests online, it's not necessarily accurate if the person doesn't really know themselves, right? Like I always say, if you tell someone that their personality type is prone to being athletic, then even if someone is not athletic, they're going to think of the one moment in their life where they did something even remotely athletic, and it's going to confirm it in their head, right? So I do think
Mm.
self-awareness is important to really figuring out who we are, because I think sometimes, especially when people talk about positive traits, we will project positive traits upon ourselves because we want those things. But sometimes we aren't those things completely, And I think that's why self-awareness is so important, because if you're not self-aware, or at least somewhat self-aware, you're going to type yourself totally wrong. Whereas if you ask someone else, someone that you trust and that you know, to type you, generally you're going to get more accurate results.
Can you share an example of how two seemingly similar personality types are different or differentiated in practice?
Yeah, I could just two very specific personality types. Of course, I use animal personality types. So if we take the Smith personality pack, and the Smith personality pack has 4 animals in it, of course, and as a whole, that personality pack values information. Now, how it goes about getting that information is quite different. And there are 2 animal types within the personality pack. One is called the chimpanzee, another is called the owls, and they go about getting that information in a very different way. Even though they're so similar in that they value it, the chimpanzee gets that information by experimenting, testing, trying to figure things out. It's almost like it's not necessarily a lab experiment or always a lab experiment. They could just be like saying words and poking at people, and whatever the response they get from the person, thus they've gotten information, right? Whereas the owl, information is also important to them, but they won't poke and prod and experiment as much as they'll listen, they'll observe, they might theorize in their own head. And as you can see, those 2 types are very similar, and yet the fact that they differentiate based on that can be very, very different too.
Different indeed. And how do you address the criticism that personality types models can oversimplify complex human behaviors?
I don't, I agree with that. Like I'm all about doing something in a way where it's not certain. I'm not a huge fan of certainty to begin with. The book is not something where it's like everyone is always going to be like this and you're going to put people into boxes. I think we all meet maybe thousands of people in our lives, at least hundreds of people in our lives, or hundreds of people. Um, and my book is just there to help people guide people in understanding the people around them better by kind of connecting to things that they might have seen or they might have heard someone say. And hopefully people will read it and go like, oh, now I know why this person is like this and why I'm like this, and we are different and that's okay to be different, versus something where I think a lot of personality typing systems, people just read them because they want to feel good about themselves. And they're like, okay, I'm automatically talented in this thing because this personality typing methodology told me I was, when in fact, I think personality typing in general as a methodology should be used to understand the world around us better and constantly be learning more about the people around us. I think that's also important. It's like, sure, put someone into a category, but as you learn more and more about them, you might shift what category they're in based on new information. And I think that constant pulling of new information for the people in your life, I think can only be a good thing.
Interesting answer, Mr. Eric. Well, indeed, interesting. What are some practical applications of understanding personality types in areas like team dynamics or relationships?
I mean, the number one thing that interests most people is relationships, right? They want to see like, oh, okay, if I am this personality type and I value this, what who's my soulmate, right? Or who should I get along with really well? And I always say that there's no such thing as a soulmate. You're not going to like perfectly match with someone where you're never going to have conflict. In fact, conflict is a good thing, because I think conflict is the thing that makes us grow. But depending on who you're matched up with and your differing personality types, it's going to determine the conflict that you're likely to have. And so if you accept that conflict as a healthy one, then that's going to be a good relationship. If it's a total non-starter for you, then definitely that's not going to be a great relationship. Some of the other ones, like parent-child relationships, super important. Excuse me. Most parents think their child is going to be like a chip off the old block, when in fact they could be a totally different personality type. And it's good for parents to just on a surface level know that their kid it's highly likely that their kid will not be similar to them, and they just have to accept that, right? And I think parents really do kind of realize that. At least when I had my own education company, the teachers that I hired, the ones that understood this methodology the best, were often the ones that had kids of their own. And they're just like, gosh, okay, no wonder why I get along with my son and I hate my daughter, or vice versa. They totally understand that, yeah, we have different personalities and we should treat people differently, just like I treat my kids differently.
Mr. Eric, as an author, writing, and life coach, as well as founder, what are your short term and long term goals?
Well, short term is to sell as many books as I can, and not just to make money, obviously, but really it's to spread the word, right? Like I really think this is
Spread the
something
word.
super important.
Yes.
Yeah, like I think if we were just to understand each other at the core level better, then I think the world would be a better place. Not to sound super corny, um, but as a long-term goal, I would like to write more books that elaborate on the methodology. My book, The Power of Personality, really teaches you to be the test and kind of goes through my own methodology of typing people. You can also find the test online on my website as well. But I always put in that disclaimer that it's just a cookie cutter test. If you really want to type people correctly, buy the book, learn the method, and it'll be a lot more nuanced versus some oversimplified tests that you take online. But long
Yes.
term, yeah, the book doesn't necessarily address certain things like I mentioned, relationships. It doesn't go in depth in relationships. It doesn't go in depth on parent child relationships. It doesn't go in depth on maybe how it might help you at work, like you had mentioned, managing workflow better, managing your employees better. It doesn't mention that just because it's quite long already. So my future plans would be to kind of elaborate more on those particular topics. And the book that I'm working on right now focuses on romantic relationships. So hopefully that can get published maybe within the year or two.
Good luck to your goals, Mr. Eric, and looking forward for more success. And of course, what will be your piece of advice for those people out there who want to be like you?
Oh, I don't know if anyone wants to be exactly like me. That's incredibly. Does anyone want to be super obnoxious? But I would say that if you're looking to, like, if you're looking to write a book per se and get a book published, I always say just keep writing, 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 and but do not let that stop you. Don't be intimidated by the publishing process and the getting the agent process. You just got to put yourself out there and not be afraid of getting rejected because it's going to happen. So just take it in, take the rejection in, help it make you stronger, help your agent query a little better, and keep putting your stuff out there.
Definitely. And thank you for that advice, Mr. Eric. And can you please recommend a book or books that influence your journey?
Wow, that's a hard question. I mean, obviously for personality theory and for my method, this book called Please Understand Me Too was pretty a seminal work by David Kersey, which is not really that known, very well known. It's called, once again, Please Understand Me Too. Maybe the title wasn't very good. I would definitely recommend buying that one. And in terms of just pure writing, I think the novel like Franny and Zoe by J.D. Salinger, that it's basically three characters. It's a three-character play, but it really does go in depth in terms of understanding what really makes the people, the characters in that story tick, and why they're in conflict with one another. So if you're interested in personality theory and different personalities and going really in depth, I would 100% recommend Franny and Zoe by J.D. Salinger. Feel free to skip Catcher in the Rye and go straight to Franny and Zoe.
Straight from that book. Thank you for that recommendation, Mr. Eric. What challenges arise when trying to categorize people into a fixed number of personality types,
Mm.
given individual uniqueness?
Yeah, it's that feeling that people want to be secure and safe and certain about things. And so they want to just once they find and put someone in a category, they're like, okay, that is that person and they're there and that's great. And then you have other people who refuse categorization altogether because they feel they're good at everything and they can do everything. And I always like to say, look, you can do anything you want in life, but that doesn't necessarily mean you like it. And oftentimes the people who don't want to categorize and put people, I don't say into boxes, but put people into similar groupings, those are the people who often want to just tell people how to act, right? They're like, no, don't be in that box or don't be in these categories. You got to fit into the category that I want you to be in because you should be more like me. So I do think that's a certain instinct out there where people don't believe in personality types because they feel like everyone can be exactly like them. Because of course, we all think that the way that we live our life is the best way to live our life. And I think the best thing about personality types is it's kind of saying, no, it's maybe the best for you, but it might not be the best for your son or daughter or lover or mother or father, or brother or sister and all the people you love around you. And that's okay. Accepting that is key.
Definitely. And how do you recommend someone determine their personality type accurately, specifically if they are new to these frameworks?
I mean, I would recommend the first thing, and I know this is gonna be so shamelessly self-promoting, but just go on my site, projectutopia.com, and you can take the test on there and just see if you like it, see how it feels, see if the animal personality type that you get is accurate. It might not always be, because of course it's always based on your answers, and let's face it, not everyone is incredibly self-aware. And if it does interest you, and if you like the material, and if you find it interesting, then I would definitely recommend buying the book. And you can buy it anywhere you buy books. You can buy it on Amazon if you want to send Jeff Bezos your money. Sure, he just had a wedding, so he's probably got to, pay off some of those wedding funds. But yeah, you can buy it on Amazon, but you can also support your local bookstore and order it from there, or go to like a big box store like Barnes and Noble. Read the book. Hopefully, it's a fun read. There's a lot of pop culture allusions, little anecdotes, funny stories. So it's not all just wonky theory. There's a lot of fun stuff in there, and hopefully you'll be able to connect with it, understand all the different contexts that are described, and learn from it.
Learn from it, people. And what's your take on hybrid models, like combining MBTI with cognitive functions to refine personality type distinctions?
My the big animus I feel towards cognitive functions is it just gets so wonky in that it's just pure word jargon or word jumble. Like people just read them and they're like, okay, this is what do they call it? This is my extroverted intuition speaking. If you ask the normal person on the street, what does extroverted intuition mean? They're gonna be like, I don't know. I don't even know what either of the words mean separately, right? So I think the problem with not just a hybrid model, but just the cognitive functions in general. I mean, that theory was 150 years old, I believe. I might be doing the math wrong. Maybe a little, maybe 100 years ago. That's quite a long time ago. And the average person is not going to really understand that, and nor should they. I think it's a lot easier if you tell someone, okay, the difference between, as the example I gave you earlier shows, the difference between this person and this person is how they get information. This person experiments, this person listens and observes. Those are two very observable traits, two things that you can see quite easily, and two things that the average person can understand at a very natural level. And I think when you start talking about cognitive functions, it just gets really in the clouds with people talking about abstract mechanisms that aren't seen in the normal real world.
Well, Mr. Eric, encouraging one. And before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people. My other podcast, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, and my book 101 review in fifth season too. Comedy 101 in second season, and my food 101 in fifth season as well. Geography 101 in its fourth season, and my baby podcast, Law 101 and Mental Health 101. Love letters in its third season, and Movie 101 review and Music 101 in its fourth season, and Science 101 and Sex 101 in its first season. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. Mr. Eric, what is the one key takeaway you want people to understand about the number and differentiation of personality types?
I always tell people, find your anchor first. Find who you are first, so that you're not feeling pressure from other people to be something you're not. And once you find that anchor, then you can start borrowing from other personality types to improve yourself, because you shouldn't just stay there. You shouldn't be like, this is who I am and I can't change. I mean, you can change, but you can grow. And I think part of growing is feeling a little bit of discomfort, trying to learn other things. So, but find your anchor first and then go from there.
Find your anchor, people. And Mr. Eric Gee, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom on abstract essay. So, can you please invite our listeners to support your advocacy, your business, your book, or your upcoming book to come now? Now, just now.
Yeah.
Please do invite our
Just go.
listeners.
Yeah, go on Amazon.com and search for The Power of Personality, or you can go on my website on projectutopia.com. And of course, that's you as in YOU, like YouTube, because it's all about you. So yeah, go on projectutopia.com and you can find more about me, or find out more about me. I also do life coaching and writing coaching as well, and you can find out about that on the site. But of course, if you're interested in personality typing, please purchase the book wherever you can purchase books.
Yes, 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 yes. So, do you have a follow up for this book, Mr. Eric?
Not, I mean, I'm working on one right now, but it's not anywhere close to being done. Maybe in a year or two, it'll come out, and the follow up would be on how to use personality types to in like romantic relationships.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. Eric G because if you support him, for sure, more and more and more empowering books like this to come, and more empowering advocacy or business to come, or for sure, coaching to come. So, Mr. Eric, thank you so much for your time.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
More to come, people. See you soon.